I have quite a few updates on the 2018 iPhones. So in my previous Leaks and Rumors episode, I talked about the 3 new iPhone models coming in 2018. But it seems that we might be getting a 4th iPhone model next year, and that would be, by the way, the iPhone SE 2. So here's the latest Leaks and Rumors, everything you need to know in terms of all the new 4 iPhone models that might be released, all of them in 2018. So grab some snacks and enjoy. Okay, so which are going to be the 4 new iPhone models launching in 2018, and what are the main differences between them? Well, the first one is going to be the iPhone X2, or the iPhone 11, or the 2018 iPhone. We're not sure how this is going to be called yet, but essentially this is going to be an updated version of the iPhone 10. So essentially the same design, the same 5.8 inches display size, just with some improved specs with the Apple A12 processor, possibly 4 GB of RAM, and then finally some camera improvements as well. But that's about it. If you got the iPhone 10 this year, you won't be missing out on the iPhone 11 in 2018. Now, what about the second one? So the second one is the iPhone 10 Plus, or the iPhone 11 Plus, essentially the Plus model of the iPhone X that we have today. So this one was leaked and talked about a lot by Ming-Chi Kuo from KGS Securities, one of the most accurate sources when it comes to Apple leaks. Then Economic Daily News also talked about it, another very reliable source. And then Bloomberg and a lot of independent sources from China, Japan, and even India. So this one was leaked and talked about like crazy. So out of all upcoming iPhones for 2018, this is the one that's the most likely to happen. So the iPhone 10 Plus would be, just as the name says it, a larger version of the iPhone 10. And now here's the thing, the iPhone 10 does come with a 5.8 inches display, which if you just look at the numbers on paper, yes, it does look larger than the 5.5 inches display on the iPhone 8 Plus and all the previous iPhone Plus models. But as a matter of fact, it's not. The display is actually smaller. So this is because of how the display is measured. 5.8 inches is actually measured until the very top corners, which means that the notch is taken into consideration, whereas the notch is essentially unusable display space. And then the iPhone 10 also comes with a much wider aspect ratio of 19.5 by 9 versus a more standard 16 by 9 aspect ratio that you get with the iPhone 8 Plus, for example. And essentially the wider the aspect ratio, the larger the display or the screen size is going to be, but the actual display area is going to be smaller. And then the Plus iPhone models also come with a different UI. So the Plus UI that essentially gives you the ability to use certain apps in landscape mode, including the home screen, and you also get a secondary menu on the left, similar to the interface on the iPads. So considering all these, the iPhone Plus, the iPhone 10 Plus, is finally returning, so to say. Now, most sources, including Ming-Chi Kuo, have confirmed a massive 6.5 inches display on the iPhone 10 Plus, which would also come with a higher resolution this time and the PPI of around 500 up from 458. Now, for me personally, I do find the regular iPhone 10 to be a bit too small, so having a plus-sized iPhone 10 would be quite nice. But other than that, apart from the larger display, the sharper display, and of course the larger battery that we're also going to get with this device because it's a larger phone, everything would be identical. So same specs, same camera as the 2018 iPhone 10 or iPhone 11 or whatever this thing is going to be called. The only other advantage that I can think of would be the notch. So since we get a larger display, the actual corners, so the empty space that the notch sits in the middle of, so to say, would be larger, and you would have much more space for your icons. So the battery indicator, the cellular signal, do not disturb mode, and so on. Next up, we've had some reports on an entry-level iPhone, but I'm not talking about the iPhone SE 2 just yet. So this would be something else. This would be number 3. This would be a 6.1 inches LCD iPhone with a PPI of around 320, 330. So this would be pretty interesting to see. An iPhone that's larger than the 2018 iPhone 10, but also with a lower quality display and overall a lower price point than the OLED iPhones. So this was reported by Ming-Chi Kuo, among with a starting price of $650 to $750. And essentially it would be targeted, according to Ming-Chi Kuo's report, towards low-end to mid-range markets. Although, I don't know, if you ask me, $650 isn't really a low end. And finally, we have the 4th 2018 iPhone model, and that's the iPhone SE 2. So what's the iPhone SE? Well, the iPhone SE was quite an interesting device. At the moment, it's the cheapest iPhone that you can buy. It's still being sold by Apple, by the way, and essentially it's an iPhone 5 design with iPhone 6s specs. So you get the same Apple A9 processor, the same 2 GB of RAM, and also the same exact iPhone 6s camera. The only major downside to this phone, apart from the obvious 4 inches display, which some people might find perfect for one-handed usability, is the display panel itself. So the colors are quite a bit washed out. The viewing angles are not great. It's essentially the exact same panel as on the 2012 iPhone 5. So yeah, it's not amazing. Feel free to check out my in-depth review of the iPhone SE that I've done last year if you want to know more about the iPhone SE. But essentially this is what all this phone is about. The cheap iPhone, which is also small enough for those who still prefer a 4-inch phone. But now with the iPhone 10 being almost the same size as a regular iPhone 8, but with a significantly larger 5.8 inches display, Apple will be updating all of their iOS products to the iPhone 10's design. Yes, including the iPad. I actually made a separate video on the iPad 10 or the iPad X, the one coming in 2018, in case you're interested in this. So this one is going to come with the biggest design changes ever since the original iPad's introduction in 2020. So essentially expect to see almost no bezels, no home button, but a notch on all 2018 iPhones and iPads, including the iPhone SE2. Now, speaking of the iPhone SE2, unfortunately, we've actually had a few reports just about this, about the iPhone SE2's design. Just a few days ago. So according to Economic Daily News Taiwan, the iPhone SE2 would be released in the first half of 2018, so around March to April, so essentially 2 years after the original iPhone SE's introduction back in March 2016. The reports also claim that the iPhone SE2 would be assembled exclusively by Wistron at its factory in India, where at the moment some assembly of the current iPhone SE is being made. Also, there was an Indian website called TechZ24. They reported that the iPhone SE would actually come with an Apple A10 Fusion processor, so essentially the exact same processor as in the iPhone 7, not the iPhone 10 or the iPhone 8, along with 2 GB of RAM, so essentially the same specs as a 4.7 inches iPhone 7 if you think about it. The camera would be a 12 megapixel one according to them, possibly exactly the same one as on the iPhone 7 one. Now they also talked about the front-facing camera being not 7 megapixels but actually 5 megapixels, so lower than the 7 megapixels one on the iPhone 7. So maybe an iPhone 6s front-facing camera along with a 1700 mAh battery, which is about the same size as on a 4.7 inches iPhone. So this would mean that the iPhone SE2 will be getting a larger display. Now, what's going to happen with the home button and especially Face ID? What's going to happen with those? Well, Apple does want to bring Face ID and also remove the home button on all of their iOS devices, but I'm not sure if we'll see this with the iPhone SE2, especially if Apple wants to keep the price low. Because Face ID is actually one of the iPhone 10's most expensive components. And then you also have the Taptic Engine, 3D Touch, and all of those features which are actually missing at the moment on the iPhone SE. So adding all of those features and Face ID would be quite expensive for a low to mid-range device, such as what the Apple plans to do with the iPhone SE2. And if all the previous rumors that I mentioned, the specs, are actually correct, if Apple's going to include an Apple A10 Fusion chip inside the iPhone SE2, this means that we will probably not be seeing Face ID on the iPhone SE2. Because a large part of how Face ID works is actually thanks to the neural engine inside the Apple A11 processor, not the Apple A10 chip. So in the end, the iPhone SE2 would be closer to the 4.7 inches iPhone 7 rather than an iPhone 10. So in the end, let me know in the comments what do you guys think about all the new 4 iPhone models for 2018. Do you think the 6.1 inches iPhone and the iPhone SE have a place in the lineup, or do you think the only iPhones that should be in the lineup should be the iPhone 10 2018 and the iPhone 10 Plus 2018? And just those two. This is what I believe Apple should do, but then again, they also want to focus on low to mid-range markets as well, reason why the iPhone SE and the 6.1 inches LCD iPhone 10 might be sold. But other than that, if you want to see more Leaked Rumors episodes like this one, be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel, and also don't forget to enable notifications by tapping on that bell icon so that you get notified whenever a new cool tech video comes out. But yeah, other than that, this has been pretty much it, so thank you for watching. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Zen of Tech, signing out. Cheers.